What's up, everybody? Jason back again with another episode of Vendors, where I sit down with the leading wedding industry professionals and have casual one-on-one conversations dealing with the questions that couples like you have, or the questions that you don't even know to ask yet. Today I'm sitting down with Patti Herioux from MDM Entertainment here in the Chicagoland area. Let's get started. Patti, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Can you tell us who you are and what do you do?
Our company is MDM Entertainment, and we provide event production services. So we're focusing a lot on drape, decor, lighting, props. We also offer DJs and photo booth services.
So there's a lot.
We handle a lot of pieces under one roof for you.
How many years have you been doing this?
Since 2001. So we're 18 years now and going strong.
Coming up on that 20-year mark. That's exciting.
We'll have to have our own party.
How many weddings do you think MDM has done?
Over the years, I'd say we're 5,000 plus. At this point, we do about 400 a year. So we are very experienced in the wedding field.
That's a lot of weddings. That's amazing.
It is. And, it's kind of a cool industry to be in because you are surrounded by love so much. And, you're at the height of people's love. So it's really cool to be involved with that.
And you're at the entertainment part. You're like the
fun
stress
part.
is gone. Let's party. What other things do you do besides weddings?
We do a lot of social events. So things like, birthday parties, anniversary parties, lots of university-style parties, schools, colleges.
What's a university party?
A lot of the universities have different balls and galas and things that they do throughout the year, or they'll have sorority, fraternity, formals, and things that we have been involved with. And we do a lot of corporate work also.
Doing all these other types of events, the corporate works, the galas and stuff, do you feel that you can bring stuff from that and put it back into your wedding?
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of the trend that we've had in the past few years has been going in the corporate world towards theme-styled parties and really doing things that have unique decor and themed aspects to them. So a lot of those pieces have translated nicely to weddings. Not that we would be doing like Star Wars themed props at your weddings, although we could. However, with prop decor and things like that, we've been able to expand that into doing custom build pieces and things that are just really unique that can be used in the wedding world also. So we have some cool custom branded wood bars that you can do chandelier pieces or use them for food service, and hexagon shelf that we have that has been great for ceremony backdrops, and just kind of pulling in those unique aspects that have typically been a little bit more on our corporate side, but finding a way to make them wedding and unique to the services we offer, but also just unique to things that you can find in the wedding world.
I think having all those elements at a reception really kind of makes the reception alive in its own right. You can go to weddings over and over and over, and they never feel the same, especially when you do stuff like custom drapery or lighting and then bringing these elements in.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little more about the idea of themes? Like what do you deal with when you're dealing with themes?
Themes in the wedding world tend to be more either focused on the floral aspects or on colors. Like they don't necessarily go like a Western themed wedding, which would be cool, but
right?
But a lot of times it's going to be focused more on creating an atmosphere and environment that people want, and we're going to be creating that and doing that through the visual aspects of the lighting, the drape, and really being able to kind of embody the overall vibe and vision that they want, using those pieces to create a unique experience.
Now you deal with all of this together. Can you talk about how it's important to be able to offer all this instead of going to each individual vendor and hunting it down themselves?
So what's been really nice from our aspect is when we have more full control over the production of an event, being where we are doing drape and lighting and the DJ side and the photo booth side, we know all of the pieces and we really see how it's all going to come together. So having full control over that, I feel like does just help in the execution of the day and making sure that things are all timed properly, that flow is happening really well.
Yeah.
Where when I've been working with a client for a year and I'm at their event and my staff is at their event and I know from months of conversation how they want the day to unfold, and I have more control over a lot of those aspects, it just really helps in making sure that the day happens exactly as they want it to.
And then you have that kind of go say where it's like, no, the couple wanted this. Let's make sure this happens.
And I fully understand the vision from like one side to the other versus just that one piece of, you know, if we're only doing DJ for a day, I might not understand as much, you know, what's happening with the aesthetic of the room or, you know, those pieces that do all come together to play to the entire vision.
So you mentioned like about a year out. How far in advance should a couple be booking with their DJ company or with their production company?
Yeah, that kind of depends on the services that we're doing for a couple. DJs, I would say anywhere from 9 months to a year out is pretty standard. That way, what we want to do with our DJs is to do a custom match to our client. So we're going to sit down, we're going to talk through music preferences, but also like just the vibe and vision for the day, how they think their guests are going to be on the dance floor. Are they going to be big partiers or are they going to be a little bit more reluctant? For things like lighting and decor, a lot of clients are even waiting until, you know, 2 months before the wedding on that, where I don't necessarily recommend that. But for things like final counts, when they're coming in later in the game, like people might not know that they have it in budget to book some lighting until later on. So lighting clients and decor clients, I'd say I'm booking more 6 months to 9 months in advance, but also we are definitely happy to accommodate like later bookings for those people who just didn't know that they had it in budget until the end.
Can you talk a little bit about how you can take stress away by booking early and you taking care of everything?
So in the booking early aspect, that's always nice because then you have time as you're meeting with all of your vendors to kind of readjust the plan. Because I feel like there is a difference between a wedding that's a good wedding and a wedding that's a great wedding. And a lot of that comes with having a really thought out feel throughout the entire event. So from the point where people are getting their invitations to the point where they're seeing that same swirl or font or monogram on the dance floor and lighting when guests are actually at the event. Like those are the events that people walk away and they're like, that was the best wedding ever. And that's because everything was really well thought out. And when you book in advance and you have time to see how all of the pieces come together, you get a better result than going to all your individual vendors and just picking what you like best from each vendor. Because those pieces in the end all do come together.
It almost feels like a meal. Like you can go to McDonald's and be like, well, I want a fry, I want a Big Mac, I want a drink, blah, blah, blah. Or you can have a nice sit-down meal and have the chef go, this is what pairs well with this. So it's a nice overall experience.
Absolutely.
So when a couple comes to you and they sit down and they're having this conversation about what they want, what are some things that a couple should ask of their production or DJ company?
So the first thing that I like to do with a couple is to have them bring me in inspiration photos. I feel like that's always a great starting point because even if they can't tell me, I like this photo because of the uplighting or the string lighting or whatever it is, it gives me a really good read on the vibe of the day. And I can look at that photo and tell you all of your photos have uplighting or all of your photos have, so I can start to put together the aspects of the elements that you like when you might not be able to articulate them as a client because this is the one time you did do this and this is the 400th time this year I'm doing this. So learn from my experience is probably the biggest thing that I would tell our clients. But bringing in those photos to get us started lets me know a lot about the client because you see not only the style that they like, but you're going to get a good idea of just their vibe. Having conversation with our clients where we get to know them on a more personal level. Like, I want to know your story. How'd you meet? How'd you fall in love? How'd you end up here? Like, you know, let me know that where then I can figure out how to tailor the day so that your guests have your experience. Because when I do 400 weddings a year, I don't want each of those to feel the same because none of the couples are the same. Like I always tell our clients, you pick each other, you pick the venue, you pick the food, you pick every other element of the day. The DJ, the music experience, the lighting, the drape, the decor should all also have those feelings of you where guests walk away and they're like, yep, that was totally, you know, that was Jason and Andrea's wedding experience. Like that was totally them. You know, that's what I want as their vendor is for that experience from the client's perspective to have been communicated to me in a way that I can bring that vision to life and their guests can walk away being like, that was the best wedding ever because that was so uniquely them. I feel like my job is worth it when a bride walks in the room and she cries. Because when she walks in and there are those happy tears of this is better than I even envisioned, that's when I know I have done my job. Like, I took the time to know her, to understand what she wanted, to be able to then bring that to life for her in this one day experience that she's going to have, where that memory for her will last forever. And really, those are the memories that last for me too. Like when you get to connect with the client on their wedding day at like the height of their happiness and their joy, and to know that you played a role in that.
So you've never had to do all this. You've been to parties, you've seen it online, and it looks easy. Because if it's done really well, in your head you can be like, I could do that. Obviously, once you start doing it, there's a lot of other things that go on. So what are some other things behind the scenes that couples never get to know, that how much work you put into this?
You know, I feel like a lot of times on the wedding side, people kind of feel like, oh, I'm going to hire you, you're going to show up and you're going to put up some lighting.
Right.
You know, but there is so much time that goes into understanding the vision to make sure that it's done correctly. You know, part of it is obviously the technical aspect. How many fixtures do you need in a venue? How many have I worked in this venue before to know exactly where placement would be? Are my techs trained to know where and how to set them? But also things like, you know, with uplighting, you can do thousands of shade options. Getting to know what color the bridesmaid dresses are, the linens are, the floral is, so that you can have a shade that has the perfect impact with everything. Like, there's so much beyond going to set up the fixture that you've had to do to make sure that the room looks perfect in the end, where when people walk in, they do have that, oh, this looks magical, it just must have happened.
Right.
Look, but there was, you know, hours of conversation, of going through Pinterest boards, of talking through shades that happened before we got to that point.
I think one of the things I always hear from couples is, oh, it costs this much for a DJ to come out just to play music. And it's like, no, there's a lot of pre-work that goes into that.
You know, on the DJ side, I feel like there's even more that goes into the actual DJing aspect that couples don't ever realize. Because when you think about it, your DJ is the person with the microphone in their hand from the point you walk in. So yeah, they're going to play the party music at the end of the night, which I think when couples go into planning and booking a DJ, that's the part they're thinking about,
Right.
is like the dance floor. But what about your introductions? What about having someone that's going to introduce the people that do speeches and toasts? How about timing with the caterer so that when we say on the microphone, sit back, relax, enjoy your dinner, like voila, they're walking out with salad plates. We want it to all flow like that, where there's so much behind the scenes work that a DJ does that starts before they even get to your event, with doing music prep, with getting your music together, with doing final calls with the clients to make sure that we know you want a live version or an acoustic version, or, you know, something for your first dance, where every piece is going to be prepped in advance. Scripts are done so that when we do get on the microphone, we're saying things that sound polished and sound
Right.
professional, but also fun. We want to do this in a vibe that's going to be perfect for the couple. There's also the aspect of planning that a couple never sees. It's when we're testing the gear here, when we're making sure that speakers are ready to go, that we're packing the correct amount of microphones, that we're packing things like your uplighting, and we're testing all this gear, packing it, getting it prepped. We have techs that are coming to pick it up. We're driving to your venue. We're doing load in through the lower whacker bowels of the city.
Always the fun part.
So, yeah, there are so many aspects that go into even getting the equipment to the event before we even touch it to start setting up, that couples never have to see that unglamorous part of the industry.
And can you talk a little bit about an MC versus a DJ? And I know you can have both in the same person, but when I talk to couples a lot, they think a DJ is just a DJ, they just play music. Can you talk about the importance of an MC?
So the MC side is of phenomenal importance, and I think that part is one of those things that is lost too when clients go into booking their vendors, because they do think about the party portion, which is very DJ focused. Like, a DJ is definitely going to be that person who's playing great music, who's reading the crowd, who's going off of the vibe of the crowd. Your MC is going to be handling that first 3 hours of the event. They're going to be the person who's going to have to get your name pronunciations right when they're doing introductions. They're going to be the person who has to know where, you know, Uncle Bob is to hand off the microphone to do a speech or a prayer before dinner or any of those pieces. So with the MC side, you need someone who's polished on the microphone, where they're able to, you know, correctly lead your guests through the event also, so that nobody's ever sitting there thinking, well, where do I go? What do I do? You know, you want that person where it feels like an organic party to the guests, but where that person is really kind of pulling the strings to make sure that things are moving along as they need to, and done in a way that feels good to the guests, and where, you know, it's going to be introduced and sounds good, and doesn't sound hokey or cheesy, and where you just have a really good flow to all of the pieces. And that happens for hours before you even get to the dance floor.
Yeah, before anyone's up boogieing, there's a lot that needs to be cohesive.
Yes.
If you're doing your research online, there are lists online of questions you should ask your vendors. A, we've already heard them all. So we're ready to go to answer those questions. B, a lot of those templates, those questionnaires are really old.
And they just don't ask the questions they should.
And they're not asking the questions they should. So what are the questions couples should be asking?
So on the DJ side, what I like to do with a client is to really get a vibe on the music. So first, they should be asking about, how we do the match on our DJs. That would, for me, if I was looking for a DJ, be of the utmost importance.
Right.
Because I want someone who I would sit down and have a beer with. Not that we would ever drink at your wedding, but they're responsible for your party.
Right.
So a big part of that is like finding the right match. And for us as a company, that has been with doing like first consultations where we're going to match someone up specifically. But for other companies, like I would definitely want to know that. How are you doing that match? How are you determining who's going to be our DJ? Other questions on the DJ side, definitely their skill as an MC and how comfortable they are on the mic, is how interactive of a DJ they're wanting and how interactive the DJs that the company they're interviewing are. Because you have every extent from a DJ who's going to be more like club style, really music focused, only on the mic as necessary. And then you have DJs who are super interactive that will be on the mic a lot more, interacting with guests. Like you as a client need to know what end of the spectrum you fall on, or if you're a nice in-betweener.
Yeah.
First and foremost, make sure that you're hiring a professional company that's going to show up and look professional and have professional gear. Make sure that the company that you hire has a backup DJ. That's a great question to make sure that you've asked, so that you do know if there was an extenuating circumstance, who's going to show up, and you're just aware. It gives you peace of mind.
Yeah, I think that's a huge deal. I think that's super important. Make sure you ask that, and make sure that's in the contract too.
Absolutely.
Speaking of contracts, are there any other elements that couples should be aware of when they're looking through a contract?
On a contract, I would say pay utmost attention to how things are spelled out. Like make sure, from our perspective with doing a lot of drape, decor, and lighting, when I'm writing up a contract for you, I want to make sure that we've hit on color, that we've talked about, setup styles, quantities, so that there's no surprise to you in the end. Like just have this plan ironed out really solidly. Definitely make sure that your vendors have insurance. There are so many venues, especially around the city of Chicago, when you're working in these amazing spaces that are museums by day, or any of those things.
Right. Yeah,
that
exactly.
are going to definitely, you want insured vendors who are prepared, to use loading docks. You have to be insured to go through the dock. Like all those pieces, make sure that that's in there. Also, I'd say from a client perspective, make sure that you have the payment schedules all mapped out for you. When you have deadlines for things like artwork or, getting in song choices or anything like that, make sure that you're aware of all those deadlines.
It's not talked enough about in our industry. When a couple is going into planning their wedding day, a budget is insanely important to map out. And I think almost all couples, at least everyone that I've ever dealt with, went into thinking, well, we're gonna spend this much on this, we're gonna spend this much on B, this much on X, and then they start doing their research, making the calls, and like, oh,
we weren't even close.
We weren't even close to that because you've never planned a day,
Yes.
You've never hired a photographer, you've never hired a DJ or a decor specialist. Granted, every market is different. A Nebraska wedding is not the same thing as a Hamptons wedding.
Well, and I feel like that's part of the problem with these like online budgeting worksheets is every market is so different. And even like the length of a wedding is different all over the country. How a wedding flows is different. So it's so hard to say like across the board, this is how much you should be spending, when maybe your wedding in Florida is going to be 3 or 4 hours and your wedding here is 6 hours. So there are a lot of those aspects that are not accounted for in your budgeter. I think in terms of budgeting, the first thing a couple should do is have a very realistic conversation about what they can afford, because as we know, it can spiral real quick. And then the next conversation after they know what they can afford is to talk about what's most important to them, because that's where the money should be spent first. And I feel like when you start to book your vendors based on importance, it kind of helps you to fit the pieces together. Right. You need food and beverage. You need a space. So I'd always say start there, because that's going to be the bulk of your funds. So when you have that piece ironed out, then I have X amount left to spend, and what's the order of importance that I want to allocate this. The other thing that I would say on the budgeting aspect is have an idea going into it of what you can spend, and be honest with your vendors about that.
Right.
Because I'm happy to tailor a package, whatever budget the client is going to be comfortable working in. So when they, when they go to a vendor and they're just upfront about like, this is what I have to spend, how is the best way for me to spend this money to have the biggest impact? That gives us the opportunity to really come up with something that's going to work great for them, that's going to have big impact, and that is comfortable for them.
But I don't think any vendor's ever going to be upset by you coming to us and being like, well, we have this much.
Absolutely. And even vendors that have minimums, at least then we can save you the time. Like if you can't meet the minimum, I can probably direct you to companies that can do great work that might be able to help you out. Like having that honest conversation saves everybody time and investment. I would much rather have that conversation up front about what's realistic and be able to design something amazing within that.
Correct. But can you give us some examples of how a couple can save money in your industry?
So there are a lot of different ways, more on like the lighting and drape side, I guess is what's coming to mind. There are a lot of different ways that you can tailor your effects to really have great impact. So if someone came to me and they want to do a full lighting design, that's probably going to include things like uplighting, table pin spotting, specialty pattern lighting, but you can also get those effects on a smaller scale. So it could be something, where you're doing an accent around the room with uplighting versus full room uplighting. You can still get some amazing effects and do it on a lesser budget. So it's just about finding the right balance of how to highlight the room and even what type of lighting is going to have the most bang for your buck. Maybe you have $1,000 to spend. Maybe you put that all into uplighting and really have that flushed out romantic feel that really encompasses the entire space versus trying to do a little bit here and there. Like, I think it's all about tailoring to the space and to the vision.
No wedding's the same. And it's very hard to say how much would this cost because there's a lot of factors that go into it. But on an average, can you give me a ballpark for DJ and uplighting and drapery and then maybe together?
Absolutely. On the DJ side, I would say anywhere between like $1,400 to $2,000 is going to be a good kind of range for a lot of the Chicagoland DJs. Lighting and decor, that's something that is so all over the board. I would say for couples that are going to try to do like a nice comprehensive overall lighting design, like $3,000 to $5,000 is probably pretty average. If you want to blow it out and do an LED dance floor and like a whole ton of lighting.
That sounds amazing, by the way.
It is. It really is pretty awesome. But, then you could obviously spend way more than that. Right. And then we have some couples who say, I have $1,500. What can I do within this realm? Right. Where you can still do some great uplighting, some great accent lighting, and do some pieces that really have a big impact.
So aside from all the gear that a DJ brings, aside from all the decor that you're bringing to the day, where else is that money going?
So like any business, we have overhead. I mean, like we all have to, if you're a professional vendor, you're going to have an office. I'm not going to be working out of my garage in most cases. Like I'm going to have to, especially something of the magnitude of what we do. Like we have warehouse space, we have to have trucks, we have vans. You have the expense of your techs, you have the expense of training those techs and ongoing training where people are, learning new technology. So there's so much that's just normal business expense that people don't necessarily think about because they're like, oh, well, you're just coming on a weekend to DJ my wedding. Well, yes. However, we have to have like a $3 million insurance policy to be at your venue. Like there's the expense of that. We have to have an office where I come to answer your emails or answer your phone calls. Right. We have all of those normal expenses. And then you have the expense of things like washing the fabric. Like when fabric comes back, I have to wash that. It has to be clean. I can't send it out dirty to the next week. So there are so many pieces that people are like, well, you're just putting up some fabric. Well, yeah, at your event, I'm putting it up and then someone's going to spill wine on it. And I'm either going to have to throw that panel away or I have to wash it or I have to maintain it. With lighting fixtures, they are things that are going out every weekend. So they have wear and tear. We have to have someone who comes in and fixes things. Or there are so many elements that go into the maintenance of the gear. And how much space you need to store some of this stuff. Like, to have a 10,000 square foot warehouse to store things where we have what you're looking for is not necessarily super cheap either. So, I mean, that's part of what goes into the expenses. And they have to go early enough to set up. And like for us, a lot of times too, with the decor side, we're the first vendor that's arriving, because if I'm going to set up a backdrop or drape an entire room, I can't do that while the caterer's trying to set up and walking through my drape. So we a lot of times are starting super early in the morning, and then we have to come back at midnight to take it all down. So it becomes a long day. There are some like 17 to 20 hour work days that we're working on Saturdays, where you're having the expense of paying people to stay on the clock, even though they aren't at your party. Like, they had to be there all day setting up. They have to go back at midnight and take down. People, I don't really think that part through, because when you do show up as a guest, it is that magical wonderland that just appeared. But like for me, I had to have 8 techs there for 10 hours setting that up,
So one thing we talk about on the show a lot is that if you go into your wedding day, you're planning everything, you're detailing everything out, everything's going to be perfect and wonderful, but something's going to go wrong, and that's okay.
Yes. And when you have professional vendors, you probably won't ever know it goes wrong. So that's why you hire professionals, because I'm going to take that stress and I'm going to make sure that any of those things that did get fucked up along the way, that by the time you walk in the room, you have those happy tears, and that you don't know that we had to run a last minute piece of gear, or something broke, or, someone got a flat tire. Like, we don't want you to ever know that, but it does happen. It's inevitable.
Can you talk about the importance of hiring a vendor versus an amateur?
Absolutely. And first, before even getting into that aspect, you have to think about the investment that you're making. A wedding is not cheap, and a wedding in Chicagoland is by far not cheap. So even if you're spending $20,000, which is definitely the lower end of the spectrum of what people in Chicagoland would spend, that's a huge investment. $20,000 is a big deal. Yeah. So when you're looking at it in that perspective, and you know that you're making a big investment, why would you not spend a couple $100 more to safeguard that investment? Like, when you hire amateurs, for one, can they even work in the space? Like, when you have someone who, anyone can be a DJ now. I mean, you can buy gear that basically DJs for you. Yeah. But do they have the depth of music knowledge to entertain 200 people? Do they have the insurance to walk into that building and set up and to plug into someone
literally
else's
just
outlet?
Walk in.
Yes.
And plug in. You bring up a really good point about that. But just walk in. A lot of venues won't even allow you in unless you have that COI.
Exactly. And so there are so many pieces that, you're taking a gamble on that aspect, where let's say you hire your DJ that's $500 from Craigslist or whatever it is, and maybe that is the diamond in the rough, and maybe you're in good hands. But what if they show up at somewhere where they can't even unload their gear because they didn't have a COI for the dock, and they didn't know that until they arrived there? If you can hire someone for a little bit more that can tell you, okay, I've worked there before, I know what I need to do to load in, they have my insurance on file, I've worked with this catering company where we have a really good rapport, so that our DJs are always going to be in time with meal service and things like that. Like, that in itself is worth it. It's worth the peace of mind, where even if you save a couple bucks at the front end, this is going to be, once all is said and done, what your lasting memories are. And if you have out of focus photos, or you have a video that the sound didn't get recorded, or any of those things that can happen when you don't have someone who's well trained in the wedding, and just handling the stress of a wedding too, you're taking a risk with that investment that you're making in the day.
I know some companies deal with one wedding per day or one wedding per weekend. Some companies can have the ability to have other people on hand. How do you deal with multiple bookings?
So we offer a lot of different services. So on any given Saturday, we have a lot of events out. We definitely do multiple book, because we have people that specialize in different areas. So if I have all of my DJs out, they might be individually handling their own shows if it's only DJ. And then we have people that specialize in different areas of the decor aspect. So if someone's doing drape, then myself or Damaris might be out leading a team. If we're doing photo booths, we have photo booth technicians. So we're able to run multiple events, because we're going to book our roster based on the talent that we have and what we're able to service. So I can book DJs aside from lighting, aside from drape, or a combo package, and be able to run multiple teams with their specialists in the different areas.
Most wedding vendors, we're about, what's your vision? How can I help you achieve that? And here's how we can do it. I can't tell you how many times people have been like, well, we want drone footage in the ceremony. Oh. And I'm going to be like, you don't. Let me tell you.
Let me tell you why.
And we can, but here's all the stuff that has to go into it.
Yeah.
So I think by having that open communication and really getting to know each other, the number one thing I think when booking a vendor is you should be able to click with them.
Yes.
Not only because you like them and you get to work with them, but if something goes wrong or if you need to be candid and totally honest, you should be able to.
Yes. And be totally comfortable doing that. The other thing too on the vendor aspect, like for me, I go and I set up the drape. I'm going to say hi to you before I leave, but I'm not staying during the day. You're not going to be like hanging out with me. But for people like you or your photographer, you're spending the whole day with them. That better be someone that you like having around.
We better be friends.
Yeah. I mean, and like in the most intimate moments too, like when you're getting ready or right after the ceremony's done and you've come back down the aisle with your new husband or wife and like you're all excited about it. Your photographer, your videographer is there, and if you aren't feeling that vibe and you're like, oh, I wish this person wasn't in my face, like that's not what you want. So there's so much of that human aspect that has to be considered aside from the talent of, the photos or the video or the drape or whatever it might be. Like there is that human element that really, like you need someone who you like and who gets you.
I think that's superbly important, not only for DJs and Decour,
but
but
picking your partner.
Yeah, a good point.
This is a marriage for everybody, not just the two of you.
Oh my God, Patti, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute joy to actually sit down and talk with you.
Be here. Thank you for having me.
If someone were so inclined to reach out to you, to pick your brain, to ask you these questions, to work with you, what is the best way they can get a hold of you?
Our website is mdmentertainment.com. That's a great place to go get an idea of our work, to see photos, to kind of start to get your feet wet. You can submit inquiries right there. Definitely give a call. Our phone number is 773-253-4986, and we're always here to answer any questions. I'd love to have people come in for a consultation. I feel like that's the easiest way to really start to get the vibe is face-to-face. Let's sit down and chat.
And you're in a very easy to get to location too, with tons of free parking.
Yes.
Which I want to stress that, free parking.
And close to Woodfield Mall, just in case.
I know, right? I'm not going to lie, that's a big seller for me. But again, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your knowledge and your time here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We hope this episode of Vendors helps you on your wedding planning. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and to share to make sure you and your fellow planning couples don't miss a single episode. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to check out our entire conversation in the podcast. And be sure to check out all of our episodes about these amazing wedding industry professionals. We'll see you next time on Vendors. Vendors is produced and edited by Night Owls Media. More information can be found at nightowlsmedia.com.